Hello there, Mr. Harrison here, with another assembly. And this is going to build a little bit on our assembly last week. If you remember, we looked at a story that had a moral, which was the enormous turnip. And I wonder if you can remember what the moral was. I'll just give you a moment to have a think. I wonder if you got it. The moral to the enormous turnip was to work collectively together, wasn't it? It's the very fact that by working together, we can put all our minds together, all our strength together to make a job easier. Now, this week, I have another story with another moral. And it's a story no doubt you've probably heard before, which is the town mouse and the country mouse. It's one of my favourites when I was younger. And would you believe it? This story is older than those told in the New Testament, in the Bible. In the fact that the person who wrote these, or certainly not necessarily wrote them, but told the stories originally, was a gentleman called Aesop. And although it's a little, not much is known about him, he lived over 2,600 years ago. So before I share the story with you, I thought it'd be quite nice to talk a little bit about Aesop in the first place. So, not a great deal is known about Aesop, and there are arguments as to who he really was. Um, Most people now are in agreement that he came from Greece, which is in Europe. And if you look in the map right in the centre, you can probably recognise our island of Great Britain. And you can see highlighted in red there the country of Greece. But it was also believed that possibly, because the name Aesop originates from a country in Africa, and that country is Ethiopia. So if you look in that top right hand corner, you can see a map of the continent of Africa, and highlighted in orange is the country of what is now Ethiopia. Now, history has not necessarily been particularly kind to Aesop, not least as to what his general appearance might have been. So some 800 years after he had died, there had been stories had been written about him, and it said he was enormously ugly and unusual looking, and he even suggested that he might have been a slave, and he managed to earn his freedom by the stories he could tell, or how much of a great entertainer he was. There was also suggestions that he was a figure of ridicule, and by that I mean when he used to walk down the street, people used to stop and point and laugh at him. Either way, his stories have stood the test of time, and as you can see down in the bottom right-hand corner here, the fact that he was born in 620 BC, so 620 years before the birth of Christ, which is about 2,640 years ago. And these stories, remember, are told by word of mouth. So although there's no record of them actually being written down, Aesop has been accredited with these stories originally. And the story I'm going to tell you, or the version I'm going to tell you, is actually written by a famous author called Michael Morpurgo, which I'm sure most of you might well have heard of. So that's the story I'm going to share with you now. So do bear with me because I'm reading from a book. Town Mouse decided one day that he would visit his cousin, who lived way out in the countryside. Country Mouse greeted him warmly, and sat him down to a great feast of corn and hazelnuts and berries. "Help yourself," she said. "You've come a long way, and you must be very hungry." Town Mouse didn't much like this plain country food, but he did not want to upset Country Mouse, so he nibbled a little bit here and a little bit there, and said how nice it was. After lunch, Country Mouse proudly showed Town Mouse over the fields and woods around her home. Town Mouse thought it very dull and ordinary, but he did not say so. Instead, he talked all the while about how much fun it was to live in the town, how exciting it was, and how you could eat any food you wanted. As he talked, Country Mouse listened, thinking to herself how wonderful it must be to live in the town. All night long, as they slept in her snug little nest in the hedgerow, Country Mouse dreamed of life in the big town. Next morning, Town Mouse was still bragging about how much better it was to live in the town. "You should come with me," he said. "I'll show you things you've never even dreamed of." But Country Mouse had dreamed of them, and she wanted to find out if her dreams were true. "I'll come," she said, and off they went to town that very day. At first, it was even better than Country Mouse had dreamed. Town Mouse clearly lived in great style, exactly as he had said. When they arrived at Mouse's house, lunch had just finished, and there were plenty of leftovers on the table. Any amount of scrumptious cheese and yummy cakes and succulent jellies. "Help yourself," said Town Mouse. Country Mouse thought she had come to Mouse Heaven. "This is the life for me," she said. That does look delicious, doesn't it? But just as she did this, the house cat sprang up onto the table and came skittering after them. In and out of the dishes they went, the cat close behind. "Follow me!" cried Town Mouse as they ran for their lives, and they only just made it too, darting down the tablecloth and running helter-skelter across the carpet towards the mouse house in the skirting board. It was some time before even Town Mouse dared to venture out of the hole again. Still, Country Mouse did not want to leave. She was terrified. "It will be fine now," said Town Mouse. "The cat's gone. Don't worry." So Country Mouse followed Town Mouse across the carpet, hoping against hope that he was right, that the cat would not be waiting to pounce on them again. The cat didn't come back, but the dog did. He came bounding after them, hackles up, barking his head off, sending them both scampering back to their hole for safety. He frightened them both so much that neither dared to come out again until the following morning. "That's it," said Country Mouse. "I'm off. You may have all the goodies a mouse could ever want in your town house, but I'm off back to the country for the quiet life." And that's exactly what she did. I wonder, as I mentioned right at the beginning of the assembly, I said that this story has a moral, and all Aesop's fables had a moral, a lesson to be learned. And I wonder, what do you think the moral or the message in this story is? Okay, if you have a moment to have a think, feel free to pause the video if you want to have a chat perhaps with brothers and sisters or mum and dad or nan and granddad. It can have lots of different meanings, can't it? Now, as I look at it, I'm just thinking back to the story. So it's the country mouse who had a good life, but was only aware of the fact that there might be something better once Town Mouse had arrived. And actually, she was clearly very excited, wasn't she? And the very fact that they went the very next day. So as soon as Town Mouse arrived one day, the next day they were going back to the town to see Town Mouse's home. But the thing is, although it looked fantastic to start with, and she was really impressed with the buildings, and even more impressed by the amazing food, much more exotic and exciting than perhaps the food she'd have ordinarily back in her house in the country. But there was a danger, wasn't there? A danger she clearly wasn't used to, because in the country she had a quiet life where she stored her food away, but in the town they were reliant on the humans clearly not being, and what the humans left behind. And although the humans might leave the room, the cat and the dog sometimes clearly didn't. And they put both the mice in great danger, didn't they? Which begs the question, was it worth the risk? Is the amazing food worth that big a risk that you might not live long enough to actually enjoy those fantastic things? Now, the moral in the act that Aesop shared was better to be happy with what you need than risk everything for more. And actually, I like this. And the reason I like it is because I can relate to this a little bit. Not only thinking back to my childhood, but even now, as an adult, there might be times where parents and grown-ups make decisions thinking, oh, I'd really like that. And actually, you find yourself having to have that conversation in your head thinking, do I want it or do I really need it? And that's the tricky thing, isn't it? Because actually, the town mouse, if you think about it, he could have lived a happy life like the country mouse by just living a simple life. But he chose a life, he was prepared to take the risks to get the really nice things, but those risks are so enormous that he risked losing his life. Now, fortunately, we don't have to make quite so dramatic decisions, but I bet over the last, since school closure, and I bet it might even happen before school closure, have you asked mum and dad for something because you want it really, really badly? It might be trying to get some credit to play on one of your games or your apps, or just wanting a game and telling them that all sorts of reasons as to why you need it because all your friends have it. Um, because it's one of those things that you want. You need it in order to be able to engage with and relate with your friends. And perhaps, because I've had this conversation with my own children, where you say no, how have you reacted? I bet some of you might even have had a tantrum. Some of you might have cried. Some of you might have stormed off to your bedroom and slamming a door. Some of you might not have taken that news particularly well. And actually, even now, you've got to the point where you haven't got the thing you've asked for, but you're still here. Life still goes on. And actually, if that's the case, you couldn't have needed it, you just wanted it. And that's worth thinking about, isn't it, sometimes? Not least is particularly during these difficult times, is trying to establish what we really, really need and what actually would be a luxury and just something we simply would want. Because this is the time where we need to take stock and actually be grateful for what we do have rather than craving that we don't. And on that note, I thought it would be quite nice to share a prayer, and here's one I prepared. Now, you don't have to join in. If you would like to join in, by all means, put your hands together and perhaps bow your head. Otherwise, if you don't want to join in, this is just a nice time for reflection, thinking about the things that we should be grateful for. So, this is the prayer. Thank you for my family, for hugs and kisses and special times together. Thank you for my friends, for laughter and chatting and sharing. Thank you for my home, for rest times, bath times and bed times. Thank you for food, for breakfast, lunch and dinner and snacks and treats. Thank you for playtimes, for toys and games and books. Thank you for fun, for giggles and for silly, happy times. Thank you for making all these lovely things and for helping me to enjoy them all. Amen. Now, perhaps while you're joining in with that prayer or reflecting on it, it's really sometimes worth remembering just how fortunate we are. Because the things we crave, the things we want, you think some people might be in a situation where they might be looking on envy of the things you have, and they're getting by without those things too. So do bear that in mind, particularly when you're asking things of mums and dads, and don't lose sight of what's important. And I think those most important things are exactly what's outlined in that very first paragraph of this prayer. Thank you for my family. And in that second verse, thank you for my friends. Thank you for your home. And thank you for food. Because actually, there's an awful lot of people in the world who don't have these luxuries. I hope you enjoyed that assembly, and I look forward to speaking to you again very, very soon. Take care. Bye bye.